From grit to greatness, a mother-daughter story. I'm Susan West, back again here. So excited to be with all of you. And I am wondering who has read this book, Grit. And today, right here on the show, you get to hear about chapter 14 because it's been written by Oglah and it's been written by her daughter, Bryanna. We'll talk a little later about why I say your name both ways. Most people are going to assume that's because I can't say it right, but there is a story there. So Oglah, you were born and raised where?
Kenya in East Africa.
In East Africa.
Yes.
And you were not born there, but we're going to talk about your upbringing in a minute. But before we get too far in, Oglah, we would be doing a disservice if we didn't have you stop and paint the picture of Africa and what that looked like and felt like when you were there.
Wow. So just absolutely breathtaking. Africa is so beautiful. There's so much that still has to be told about the story of Africa. But growing up, I grew up in rural Africa.
Really?
In a very small
I
farm
love
town.
how you say that.
Yes, very small farm town. Walked to school, back and forth to school from kindergarten to 8th grade. And I think that's the first time I really got to understand the word grit. and it's nothing special because everybody's doing it in the village.
Right there, it's nothing special. Here, we ask our kids to, walk to the mailbox, and that's a challenge,
Bryanna
right?
wouldn't walk to school. It was just across the street.
Right.
No, but Africa is absolutely beautiful.
Really?
Yeah.
What, if you had to paint a picture for me, what does that look like?
So think about, first of all, the people. Just a sea of people full of smiles.
Really?
And everybody's so welcoming, and nobody stops to look at somebody else because you're different.
Right.
It's just, it's very welcoming. Amazing weather, so very tropical. The weather changes throughout the day.
Wow.
So you get to adjust to that. And then just the beautiful savannas and the cities. Nairobi has some of the hottest clubs in the world.
Who would have thought? Like, I would have never thought that. Really?
Private golf clubs.
Really?
We actually went to a club the last time we were there, and they had Ferraris outside, and you could rent one to go home if you didn't want to drive.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. It's so interesting because I didn't know what you were going to say when I asked you the question to paint the picture because we don't rehearse this. And when you say it, though, that's not what I would imagine. So I love the fact that you're able to paint that picture because our viewers can see that maybe some of them very similar to me, what they think is not the reality of the beauty and the wealth and the happiness and the grit. And it's crazy to me that all that's combined in one place.
And I think also from the current Africa, so there's a big difference between the Africa I was growing up in and the current Africa. The current Africa right now is the hub of the world.
Right.
So when and I think we just talked about Microsoft, what did they just launch in Africa?
Yes, they just opened an African Development Center. They announced plans to open one in Nairobi and in Lagos.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we also have one of, if not the largest, online banking, mobile banking system in the world called M-Pesa, and it's not been replicated anywhere else in the world.
Wow, so some amazing things happening. But what we want to talk about today is how you came from there. And ever since I've met you, I've wanted you to come on and tell your story. But it wasn't until you said to me, I need my daughter, Bryanna, to be able to tell her story. But first, let's hear how you became who you are. And then we're going to talk to Bryanna about who she is and how you made a difference for her as her mom.
Absolutely. So growing up in that rural setting, poverty, struggles, and triumphs, being able to go to school, a primary school, and being able to take an exam in the 8th grade that got me admitted into one of the most prestigious high schools in the country, in Kenya. And I got in because that specific high school accepts as students 10% of the student population from families that were experiencing poverty.
Wow.
So I got in.
Excellent.
And then after that...
But out of that group, you had to have some amazing level of intelligence and things that they saw for you to be accepted.
You know what is so amazing? My mother shares this story. If she was here today, she'll tell you this. There was nothing amazing about me. I was very average. I was very sickly. There was not a lot of... I wasn't that child that you looked up to and said, oh my goodness, they're going to be something. I grew into it.
Oh, wow.
And it was really until I got to college that.
But how
even
did you
my
get
own
chosen
parents-
then? What did you do to get chosen?
So from 8th grade to high school was my grades.
Okay.
Yes, and then from high school to college, I got myself in there. I
Okay.
worked so hard. I wasn't accepted. The university, the college that I went to, was one of the 16 centers of excellence in the world in hospitality training. They took about 100,000 applications a year and only admitted 1,200.
Wow.
Average, and I got in there too.
Are you a little proud of your mom?
I'm a lot of proud of my mom.
That is so good.
Yeah.
That is so good. So you got into the school. Your mom says you were average.
Yes.
And you grew into who you are today.
Absolutely, and my parents never came to the college until I invited them to my graduation. That's the first day that they came to
And
college.
why was that?
They were just so absorbed in being part. We grew up in such a rural area,
Okay.
and the city was too far back then.
Wow.
And so there was just never any connection. Plus, my parents had broken up
Okay.
and separated.
Okay.
And so there was no relationship there. So my mom and my dad came separately to my graduation.
Right.
And within that, I'd actually gotten an internship in Europe,
Oh, wow.
in Oslo. Applied for it and got in
Yay.
based on the grades.
Based on the grades.
Lots of hard work there.
Yes. And your little area where you grew up has borne so many athletes, right?
Yes.
Runners.
Yes.
Can you talk about that?
Yes, so the Eldoret area has this smaller town called Iten, and Iten has birthed 99% of all the Olympic runners in the world that come from Kenya.
Wow.
And when we were growing up, that's all the hope I could see was the runners just running day, morning,
So did
night.
you feel, Oglah, poor?
No.
Did you know that you, at some level, economically, your family was poor? Because when you talk about hope, what I want to know is what inside of you, from where did it come that you felt you needed hope? Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, it does. So poverty, I didn't feel it because generally in the area it was all equal, I guess.
Okay.
It was what we're used to. When I talk about hope is growing up as a girl back then, there was no really space for girls to achieve anything. We were not looked at as achievers
Okay.
or people that were going to go out in the world and do big things. The graduation rate in my high school was less than 50% for
female-
girls.
for girls,
For
okay.
girls, yes. And there was not a lot of emphasis. You know, our parents spent more time looking at the boys, and it was just cultural. It doesn't
Right.
make it wrong. It was just cultural.
Right.
So when I say there was no hope, is there was, apart from the Olympic runners, there was nothing else there to look up to. There was nobody that had an MBA. There was nobody that drove a fancy car. There was nobody that owned a large fancy property to look at. So basically, everybody just settled and accepted the circumstances.
So when you looked for drive and hope of huge success,
Yes.
something bigger than yourself that created, that really needed discipline,
Yeah.
really needed, that's who you saw.
You know, and I've shared this story, and there's really no logic that can explain the person that I've become today. There's a lot of, I was born a fighter. When I was born, my mother tells this story where my neck wouldn't stand up on its own, and she said it literally just swiveled. And for almost 3 years of my life, at one point she said, we thought you were going to die because you were so sickly and so weak and so thin. And, you know, I was not this kid that was born into any kind of wellness.
Right.
So I think that's when I started fighting. I started fighting that. And in my mind, I've never believed that I could not be anything that I wanted to be. Even in that moment when I was walking to school, so asthmatic, coughing, getting to school late. And back then, children in Africa were caned in school.
Oh.
So I got to school, and there was always that 8 o'clock parade, and I always got there late because I was so asthmatic. It took a lot for me to walk and run
Right.
in their early morning cold temperatures. And I was always caned and punished and called out and mocked.
So
by
cane
whichever
means hit
team.
with a cane?
Yes.
Yes. See, that's just so foreign to me.
Yeah.
So you were sickly, you were late, you were giving your best, and then you were punished. And did some of that feel ridiculed in front of others as well? Did that not hurt your esteem?
You know, I said this to somebody the other day, and I was actually prior to coming here in another Women Surviving and Thriving conference with some really powerful female leaders, and I shared a story or my perspective on I guess suffering is when you are in that moment. I've never looked at it as long term because I didn't even have an ability to think there was another step beyond the hardship I had right in front of me.
Right.
So I just knew that was a domino that I had to just break through and barrel through.
Right.
And once I got through that, it was just another problem after another problem
Right.
after another problem.
So you were so focused on getting past the problem.
Yes.
Okay.
And it took me over 30 years to understand what that was when a top leader in Target looked at me and said, knowing you, I've never met somebody that is as strategic as you are,
Right.
as futuristic as you are. And I reflect back on my childhood because I conditioned myself to be that person that only focused on the future.
Right.
And the end of the story.
Right. Not where you were in that moment.
I've never allowed myself to feel despair in a moment at all.
That's good. And what did this look like to you? I know that you grew up, you were raised here,
Yes.
right? In Orlando?
I lived in Orlando till I was 11, and then I moved to Dallas.
Okay.
Yes.
So you grew up in the United States.
Yes.
And watching your mom, what did that look like from your viewpoint?
It was amazing, but I guess I would say that a lot of the times, especially as I get older, I hear a lot of stories of how amazing my mom is and everything she does, and I only saw it's different when it's on the other side
Right,
of the curtain.
exactly. You're like,
So-
well, I could tell you a story or two.
No, it's still positive, of course, a lot of positive,
Right.
but at the same time, it was a lot of, like my mom said, setting a standard of excellence throughout my entire life.
Right.
But there was always a high bar, and there was very few times for anything else besides that.
You said before the show something about you grew up in a home where excellence was required.
Yes, there was no other thing. I remember a time when my mom cried because I got a B in middle school.
I
And she told-
rejoiced when my kids got B's, just so you know.
Yes, but the reason she gave was she said, Bryanna, I'm not crying because you had a B. I'm crying because you don't even seem like you want an A.
Right.
So
The desire wasn't there.
desire.
Yes.
So it definitely sets, and I even see that now in my brother and sister as they're coming home with grades. Even to this day, when I come home with college grades, there's always that expectation of it has to be even above and beyond.
When did you, and how did you create that desire that your mom so desperately wanted you to have?
Definitely. I think it was a multitude of different things, but I feel like one of the things that as I reflect now, I'm still really young, I'm 19,
Exactly.
but as the way that I'm navigating through life, kind of what's my purpose of, I can look back and see that my mom has done so much and she's overcome so much. Now where do you go from here? You're already so high up, there's not a lot of space, now there's a ceiling. So I would say that a lot of my motivation comes from the idea that because so many people behind me, a whole community had to sacrifice for me to get to where I am and have the privilege I have. It's not just a desire, but it's an obligation to give back to the communities around me.
Was there ever a time, and we didn't rehearse any of this, that you tuned out her story?
I would
Or
say
you
there was
just
definitely
you wanted it to be irrelevant to you, like enough?
Yes. I would definitely say the period of independence.
Right.
My mom, she's I would say she wants to be very involved with every step, and
Right.
there's no problem with that.
I might have a little of that in me too.
Exactly. There's definitely no problem with that, but wanting to grow up and gain independence and step out there, there's always that little tug of war. I feel especially between mothers and daughters,
Absolutely.
because she could still be your best friend, but I heard one time you can love someone and not always like them.
Exactly.
So
sometimes that happens here.
Definitely.
But her story at some point became important to you because you decided you had an obligation
Yes.
because of her story.
Definitely. And that was the second time that I ever went to Kenya. The first time was when I was 2, and then a couple years ago I went when I turned 16. And just going back, you often, you hear the stories of you're complaining, but back in my day, and
Exactly.
you're always hearing those stories growing up. But really seeing that, and like my mom said, there's no explanation. The steps that I have to imagine in my mind of going all the way from here to the life we live now is just, it can only be through God's grace. And that's something that I think of a lot, that because he set so many steps ahead of us, there must be a greater purpose.
Right.
And it's our job to fulfill that, know?
Because of your history and because of your
Yes.
faith and your Christianity.
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
Yes,
Is that fair to
definitely.
say?
Yeah, so let me reflect a little bit about how she got to Kenya when she was 16.
Yes.
So Bryanna was born a perfect child, at least in my world.
Yes.
She was the most beautiful, 3 changes of clothes a day and all that. So she never had any drama, didn't go through, I was waiting for puberty, 12, 13, nothing happened. 15, about 15 and a half, she was going through something. I think she was really fighting through her independence. And to me, I was looking at her like she was acting out. We had put so much pressure on her growing up, and she basically had a meltdown at 15 and a half. And I remember that day when I talked to her on the phone, and she's been an avid athlete, and she was talking about she didn't want to run, and she was tired, and I felt like she had lacked the spirit. And I came home, and I looked at my husband, my current husband right now, and I looked at him and said, just want to let you know that we're going to Africa. And he looked at me, and I said, we're going to Africa because I need to take my child to Africa. And my husband didn't understand that until we got there.
And he went with you?
The whole family.
The whole family.
We took a 6-week sabbatical to take her to Africa.
Wow.
And the reason I wanted to do that is I knew that she was at a moment living in the United States where she could, in my opinion then, it doesn't mean it was reality, she could start really making some bad decisions and quitting things that she was very passionate about.
So this was going to be pivotal.
It was a pivotal
moment. You were going to do everything you could as a mom to make sure you could impact the pivot.
Yes. In the African culture, when a girl reaches that age, she's actually isolated from the community and put in a setting of a group of women and older women. And you go through your transition from childhood to womanhood.
Wow.
So I couldn't do that to her. My children are as American as it gets. So I was like, I'm not going to traumatize her with that. But what I did is I reached out to the top athletic coach in Kenya. And I found him in a camp in Iten. And he's the coach that's responsible for the success of almost all the Olympic runners that you see in the world. And
so that hope that you saw growing up.
I found Brother Combs, and I said, Brother Combs, can my daughter come to your camp for just a week or so? And he said, well, he's from Ireland. He said, well, Oglah, I just want to let you know I just have boys right now. And I said, she'll be okay. I'll find somebody there. So Bryanna ended up spending, it was a week at the Junior Olympic Training Camp in Kenya. And
with all boys.
And I completely, I left her there and disconnected.
How were you?
It was amazing. It was an amazing
Were you frightened
experience. A little bit, just because, you know, I had never really been out from under my mom's.
Yeah, you wanted to be, but you didn't.
Yes, definitely. And it was also just a foreign country and a completely different experience, but it was amazing.
Tell them a little bit about the camp on those young men and some of the things the coach told you about what made Kenyan runners different, because I think it's important.
Right.
Definitely. I think the biggest contrast, as someone who's grown up under the American system, and I've done my entire competitive running career under the American system, the biggest shock to me was we start with kids here so young. I've been running, I did little kids races with my dad since we found a ribbon since I was 5.
Right.
And I've been running competitively since middle school, and it was such a strict system. I had 5:55 practice every morning. I would have meets all year round. And it was just very, I would say draining to an extent, because they're really trying to get as much out of you as possible from a young age. Versus when I went to this camp, they said, we usually don't start running girls at your level until maybe you're around 17, 18 years old. Most of the time we just tell them, you know, stay active, stay fit, and then we'll eventually start, you know, training you. And they said they don't use timers until a couple weeks before the meet.
There's no timers.
There's no. I grew up in Texas, so you know we have the A-grade stadiums and tracks. A lot of money's put into sports, and it was very simple. But they were running times that I've never seen in my life on a consistent basis. And it was just that idea that it's a lot about being in tune with yourself and your own body. And it's not so much about the times. The times will eventually come, but it's making
you're worrying about yourself and your own body.
Exactly, and staying very in tune with that. So that was a completely different perspective of, you know, growing into yourself. It's not always a rush. It's more of a journey.
And not a rush, more of a journey. And people should write that down. That's about the 14th chapter, right? It's not a rush, it's a journey.
It really is. And I remember when the coach crouched down when the Olympic runners were running, and he was teaching you about the rhythm of the pace. And I remember he was hitting and saying, and he was watching how their feet hit the ground, and there was a rhythm that he expected them to do, and if he didn't see that rhythm consistently, I mean, I'm talking about 40, 50 competitive runners, and he's the coach of an Olympic runner is watching feet tap on the floor to make sure they got the rhythm, and then I remember he told you, you have to run and succeed and win first in your mind in Kenya before it translates to your body.
Wow.
Yes.
It was a completely different concept.
And your two things, Bryanna, your attitude when you returned and your running. Where had they changed?
Okay, I would definitely say so much more in my attitude. I definitely saw the bigger picture, you know? I feel like now I get to reflect, but in the time everything was very intense.
Right.
Being a girl in high school and, you know, girl drama and seeing the future but not really understanding what that looks like or what that means. So I had such a bigger scope of understanding.
Right.
And it kind of gave me more perspective. So I feel like that changed my attitude and the way that I kind of moved through life even till today of being driven, because I to think about the blessings and the luxury that I have, that if I fall, I have a safety net.
Right.
You know, if something happens to me, you know, maybe reluctantly, but my parents can come and save me to an extent.
Yes.
And so many people, especially my parents being immigrants, did not have that opportunity or that luxury growing up.
So that goes back to your obligation, right?
Yes,
your
definitely.
obligation. Can we pause a minute? And we've got some pictures I'd love for you all to explain where they are. And so tell us about this.
Okay, so this is our beautiful African-American version of the transition from childhood to womanhood. So in the Latina world, it's quinceañera.
Right,
So we did something similar, and we made it very traditional. So even though she had a beautiful dress, you can see all the jewelry, and all that jewelry that she has on her was actually placed on her by her grandmother, was placed on her by her aunties. We sang traditional songs as we were putting the jewelry on her. There was a significance to that. And then there was speeches about going into womanhood and the kind of child that we wanted her, young lady wanted her to grow
And
into.
how old were you here?
I was 16.
16.
Yes,
Okay.
it's my sweet 16, I guess, is
Yes,
the
absolutely,
American
absolutely. And then we have here.
Actually, this past summer, I had the luxury of attending with my mom the Keller Williams Southern Africa Region conference. So we went to South Africa. It was my first time. And I was able to connect and network with so many influential people and see kind of the dynamics of how things are happening and progressing in Africa. There's so much business there, and it's a dream of mine to go back in some capacity. So
I
feel
love
like-
that you just said I had the luxury.
Yes.
That you understand luxury. What do we have next? Same place?
Yes.
Yes,
Same
I
place.
can tell because you have the same outfit on. So that was good. And then from there,
Where were we?
Is it like
This is
sisters?
actually, I remember, I think this was the year or two after I moved to Dallas, and my mom came to visit. So, you know, this was just us
So
enjoying
beautiful.
each other's, you know, between my mom's business meetings,
Yes.
enjoying each other's company.
love it.
Yes.
And here,
Well, this was one of the most trying times of our life, college tours.
Yes.
So right now we are at Duke University.
Okay.
Bryanna wanted Duke, Vanderbilt, and so we went on the tour. But this was so special. It was really, really special to be able
And
to
where
go
did-
to
where
all
are
this
you going to
university.
school?
I currently go to the Prairie View A&M University, just north of Houston.
okay.
Yeah.
And you're running there.
Yes.
Good, good. And then this is a Keller Williams event.
Yes.
Okay. And then an elevator.
Yes.
Yes.
We're on vacation then.
Yes.
Just enjoying and
Just
we
beautiful.
took some time
And
vacation.
then what do we have here?
This is a high school graduation. That's my mother, so that's 3 generations. It was very, very important that my mom attended it.
Absolutely.
And Bryanna made us so proud.
Yes.
You can see all the ribbons that she has over there.
Yes, very nice.
And all the awards that she got. On this particular day, she was actually in school, and I surprised her. I was at a conference, I don't remember where, and I drove over.
Oh, this was recent.
No,
No,
this
junior
was
year of
Junior
Junior
year?
year.
Okay.
So
I
I
feel like
just-
you made a quick trip recently.
Yeah. So I had somebody call and say, hey, we're here to pick you up. I think it was my friend Caroline.
Yes.
And she's coming out of high school, which was really great. I wanted to see how she dressed when she went to class.
Oh, good.
So I flew to Dallas to do that.
Oh, wow. That is good.
Yeah.
And then what is this?
This is my wedding day. And she was on my lineup.
Yeah.
It was a very important day when I got
Absolutely.
remarried. Yeah.
Yes. Wow. So some amazing times. So if you had when we talked, Oglah, about telling Bryanna's story. First of all, can you tell everyone what her African names are, right?
Yes.
Said.
So her two middle names, Chemtai and Naserian.
Okay.
Yes.
And are you proud of those names?
I am very proud of those names. I actually went through a brief period in middle school where I would only be referred to as that.
Okay.
But, you know, kind of confused some of the teachers.
Exactly. So you had to change that. But when you said you have grit, and you said she has in some ways more, what did you mean?
So I know growing up and having me as a mother is not easy. I push really hard, and I set the bar so hard.
Right.
And she's been through it. She's been through the whole journey. Me coming here, and before I had, you know, her sister, my second daughter. It was just she and I for 10 years.
Yes.
And I was working in the hotel industry, so nights, weekends, she came to my work. She slept at my job sometime with me when I was running hotels, and she traveled everywhere with me. She's been able to witness. I take her everywhere, any opportunity that I wanted her to witness, and be inspired, because I knew she wouldn't have the same experiences that I did for the vision. You know, you have vision for your children. To be great, and not to be great. And I don't talk to my children about wealth. She actually talks to me more about, Mommy, we need to talk about wealth. But I don't. I have no affinity to money, because I didn't grow up with it. It doesn't mean anything to me.
Does it bother you that she does?
No.
Okay,
no.
good.
She keeps me on track. She absolutely keeps me on track. She's a finance major.
Exactly. There you go, Mom.
Yeah.
Let me help you with this.
So I know when she went through that, and having to be perfect all the time, and having to be an A student her whole life, and having to be an athlete, and having to do all the things that she's been able to do, and just to see her grow to be the woman that she is really, really, really amazing. And the reason I say she has more grit is, and I'll just give you an example. Last October, we went through a very hard time, where she was first diagnosed with her autoimmune disease, and then it became thyroidism, and then the doctor pulled her off from running. She could not be actively running, and they were talking about how her heart could fail, and it was really, really tough as a mom to go through, to just not be able to be with her, because she was in Houston, and she still wanted to go to class. She was taking 18 credit hours. She was trying to keep running, and she was just in complete denial of this disease and what it was doing to her body, and the changes that she was experiencing. She's always been that athlete her whole life. So
yeah, and if you're not that athlete, who are you?
Honest.
So she broke through that, and I think around February, March, I was really worried that she wasn't going to break through that.
We had breakfast, and we talked about that.
Yes. And I poured my heart out to Susan, and then I'm so blessed to work with a company that understands that. I stopped working, shut everything down, and I took Bryanna and her siblings to the mountains. So we went to Tennessee, and we just disappeared for days and days in cold air, and we did so many fun things.
Yes,
we climbed mountains, we
definitely
walked,
a memorable experience.
we just took moments to do that, because I want her to disconnect, and she came back. We all came back reconnected and refreshed, and she's been able to fight this disease.
And are you running again?
I was just cleared recently, so I'm starting back up. Hopefully I'll be able to make it to the fall season.
So talk to me about your aspirations on the track. Like, what's your favorite race? And what are your aspirations? What are your goals?
Okay, well, I will be rising to my senior year of my undergraduate degree this year. And I'm hoping to, finish it up strong. This will be ending nearly.
No hope.
Yeah,
But I will. I'm nearing a 15-year
And
career.
by the way, in our company, we're not allowed to use the word hope, and I'm not kidding. So, no, we're not. Like, in a meeting, somebody says, I hope to do, you what?
Oh, no.
We're not allowed to hope
She
either.
has a plan.
Yes.
Or her own plan, not mine.
Yes.
Yeah, there are things that give us hope, but hope is not a strategy.
No.
Yes, so I will be finishing a nearly 15-year running career. And then I would like to continue on to grad school. Actually, I will be continuing on to grad school to pursue a Master's of Science. And for me, I definitely am a believer in the journey aspect. I don't, claim to know this is the next step. I actually feel like that's very restrictive. A lot of the opportunity I had was because I was just open,
Right.
but I feel like a lot of it is preparation and openness, always preparing for the next step, even if you don't know what that looks like. Currently, I will be interning with a tech company this summer in Austin. I'll be at Google's Austin location.
Wow.
And a year ago, I was not looking at tech.
Right.
A year before that, I didn't even know, I thought finance, there's only 3 positions.
Right, exactly. You had to pick one of them.
Exactly.
Right.
So the world has been my oyster recently, so many blessings. But overall, my long-term goal is I do want to have a role in, working on socioeconomic empowerment in underprivileged communities in developing countries.
Wow.
Just because of the experiences I've had with both of my parents being from outside of the U.S. and
Right.
coming here. And I'm just taking this as a journey. Every step is learning, meeting new connections, and building my knowledge and my resources. So when I go back, I have that opportunity.
So it's from grit to greatness, a mother-daughter story. But I need you to tell us, Oglah, when she was just speaking, what do you see?
I see God's grace. I see to birth a child is amazing, but to see them become their own. And I know Bryanna I've always known that she was going to make something big out of herself, but not for her personal success. She really is going to change the world.
For others.
For others.
For others.
Yes, she gets to finish my journey.
Right. She gets to finish her journey, and after her and after her, and so on and so on. This has been an amazing time with both of you lovely ladies. And I know that you connect with this, but your mom's ability to see beyond the hardship that was in front of her and to never limit herself with who she could be, she has clearly passed that on to you.
Thank you so much.
But for our viewers, if there's anything that you heard today, your desire, Bryanna, to be more because of your obligation to what your mom did. That's the knowledge, that's the nugget, that's our gift to you all today, is Bryanna getting that because of this, she has an obligation. And you are beautiful and young and youthful, but you are also an old soul that your mom helped to make you. So thank you, ladies, both for coming here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I just want to thank you and congratulate you.
Oh, because I have a grandbaby.
You have a grandbaby.
Yesterday, Benson Gray. Thank you, Tyler and Sarah. We're so excited. See, you never know what happens here. Like, who would have thought we all 3 would have been crying?
I know, right?
She's a little better at it because she's probably worried about her makeup. We're a little older. We don't care. But what an amazing opportunity this was for all of us. We partner together in business. We partner together as mothers, as people that want to make a difference in this world, and from grit to greatness, a mother-daughter story. And I really think we have an obligation, we'll use Bryanna's word, an obligation to write chapter 15, 16, and 17.
Absolutely.
So will you ladies come back?
Absolutely, we will.
Any questions, any comments any of our viewers have, please take your time. And we, us 3 ladies, will commit to you that we will take the time to read your comments and we will respond. And thank you so much. And I will be back again next Thursday with more guests. We really appreciate you watching. And ladies, now we can high five.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.